So good evening, everyone. My name is Alejandra Tejeda, and I'm the Family Child Care Coordinator with SEIU Local 509. I would just like to take a second to thank you all for joining us for a roundtable discussion with family child care providers and a policy expert on the Common Start vision. So for those that might not know, Common Start has been around for years, and in the last session had 5 victories and has currently filed 2 bills and is waiting on a hearing. A lot of work has been done in the past couple of years, and many of you have been there along in the journey. So as we know, family child care educators play a significant role in early education and care across the state of Massachusetts and within the Common Start vision. And so that's why tonight we've put this roundtable together so that you can hear from other family child care educators as well as policy experts on what the Common Start vision is and how it will impact educators like yourself and the families that you service. So I'd first like to also just take a second and highlight any of the legislators that might be here and their aides. And thank you all for joining us. It's great to always have the presence of those that are in the legislature and are working to pass the Common Start vision. So now I'm just going to give you a quick run through on the roundtable discussion. We'll hear from 3 educators, as I said, from across the state on their experiences. We'll hear from a policy expert, and then we will have a panel discussion where we hope to have your input via comments and questions. And as you hear these experiences and stories from the educators, we'd love for you to leave comments in the chat, leave reactions, and we'll have a further discussion after they give their experiences to further the discussion with other educators and those here tonight. So to begin, I'm going to pass it on to Yesenia Delgado, who would begin our roundtable. And I'm just going to pass it on to you, Yesenia.
Muy buenas tardes, mi nombre es Yesenia Delgado. ¿Me escucha, Alejandra?
Yes,
mi nombre
Yesenia.
es Yesenia Delgado, estoy en el área de Springfield, Massachusetts. Llevo alrededor de 7 años con el cuidado de niños en el hogar y estoy bien contenta de compartir y ser parte de la unión, y entiendo que la importancia de nosotros tener este mayor pago es porque necesitamos ofrecer un buen servicio, y para nosotros poder ofrecer un buen servicio necesitamos contratar buenos asistentes con una buena paga, y entiendo que si nosotros no recibimos ese aumento, nosotros no podemos dar un servicio de calidad. Para ofrecer un servicio de calidad necesitamos buscar personas, y un personal bueno, responsable y de calidad, y nosotros poder ofrecer ese servicio. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Yesenia, for sharing your experience. The need for increased wages is felt across the state, and hearing stories like yours is really important as we promote Common Start vision. And so now I'd like to pass it on to Romery Evangelista, who will give her experiences and stories.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Romery Evangelista. I'm Brazilian, and I'm being a child care educator for almost 5 years. So I work with subsidized family and private family too. In this almost 5 years, I see families struggling to renew their voucher. Sometimes they give up because the process is too difficult. They need to prove the income. They need to prove a lot of things, and it's a lot of form to fill it out. And at the end, most of my family, they give up. And private parents, they struggle too to pay for a good family child care. And to get the voucher, they need to prove a lot of things too, and sometimes they do not qualify, and they don't have enough money to pay me, but they do not qualify. It's unfair. Sometimes I get affected, financial and emotional too, because when you have to let a parent go, it's the both sides suffer. When I have to let a child go, I suffer because I need the money and I don't want to lose the child, because at the end you got very attached to the family and to the child, and it's bad for the parents too. If they have to give up their jobs or look for another place to put their kids, it's bad. It's bad for both sides. And I think if the voucher were more accessible for more families, educators would have full capacity the entire year, and will be able to serve more families, and parents will benefit from a quality program, such more activity is specified for each child, more flexible schedules. If I got more money, I will be able to hire more assistants, maybe more than one. We can get more qualification to work with children with special needs, because it's difficult to parents to look for a place to accommodate their kids with special needs. And if we don't have a good program, how come we're gonna serve those children too? If more families have access to the voucher, it will generate more jobs and more financial income, and that will help us to offer a higher quality program. That's what I think.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Helmedi. This is an experience that many educators have also shared with us along the pathway, that in order to provide high quality care, we need to help the families that are struggling to pay for care, that are struggling and don't need the subsidy system. And we know with the Common Start vision, a part of that is changing the subsidy system, making it more accessible for families to access vouchers in a way that hasn't been possible before. And so now I'm going to pass it on to Kim, who's going to talk about the Common Start vision from the policy perspective.
Thank you, Alejandra, and thank you to Roere and Yesenia so far. As folks have heard tonight, and as we'll continue to discuss, there is an urgent need for action to address the current childcare and early education crisis. And the Common Start Coalition envisions an early care and education system that's affordable and accessible for Massachusetts families, that provides stable funding directly to providers, and that thereby strengthens the Commonwealth's economy. We're very excited that the two bills filed this session, Senate Bill 301 under the leadership of Chair Jason Lewis and Senator Sue Moran, and House Bill 489 under the leadership of Representative Adrian Modero and Representative Ken Gordon, would advance this Common Start vision and provide the framework necessary to deliver affordable care. As we've heard tonight, low pay is making it difficult for educators to keep their doors open, pay their staff a living wage, and meet the needs of all the families seeking early education and care. This bill will deliver a new and stable source of funding for educators that's similar to the sustainability grants that have allowed providers to keep their doors open over the last 3 years. The funding will provide substantial relief for businesses and allow for increased salaries, benefits, bonuses, and increased professional development and continuing education opportunities. In addition to delivering a funding source for educators that will help ensure long-term stability of the industry, Common Start legislation takes a major step forward in addressing the affordability crisis by making financial assistance available to a wide majority of families. The bills prioritize families earning at or below 85% of the state median income to receive financial assistance to help afford childcare and early education. And as funding becomes available, that eligibility would expand to middle income families. As we heard tonight, there is also an issue with families being able to navigate the process to access the vouchers. This bill would make it easier for families to apply for vouchers in their language and to learn about the availability of vouchers. So thank you to Senator Lewis and Moran and Representatives Modero and Gordon for your leadership. And thank you to the over 80 representatives and 20 senators who have already co-sponsored this bill.
Thank you so much, Kim. So now, after hearing all these panelists tonight, we see how Common Start can have a profound impact on early education and care. But Common Start can't address all of our issues. So as 509 is co-hosting this, we'd like to talk about our 3 specific childcare bills that we're pursuing in the legislature as well. So the first one I'll mention is an act relative to large family childcare homes, which would increase the cap from 10 to 12, which we know has been a major issue for educators for years. How is it possible that you can care for 6 kids by yourself, but when it comes to 10 with an assistant, the math isn't there? So we're hoping to increase that from 10 to 12. The second bill we have is an act to provide retirement security to care workers. And this bill is very important to many of our educators, as we know that retirement plans are not something that educators currently have. We know that for many of you, you spend 20, 30 years caring for children, but are left with no security when you retire. And so we're pursuing a bill that would create a retirement account for our educators. And lastly, we have an act promoting a foundation for universal childcare. And so this bill would prevent cities and towns from enforcing outdated and exclusionary zoning ordinances that are inconsistent with state law and the recommendations of EEC. So basically what we found is there are a few cities and towns across the state that just have simple little rules that shouldn't exist. And while it might not be a big deal for other people, it's very important for us that we make sure that family childcare is supported across the state, that there are no limitations to our educators in opening a program. So those are the three childcare specific bills that we have at 509. And if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to Kim, myself, Santiago, or William. And we can connect you more on how 509 will be promoting those bills and making sure that we can follow through on advancing these 3, as well as the Common Start vision. So now I'm going to turn it back to our panelists. So we have Romery or Yesenia to tackle this question, and I could also turn it over to the audience. So for the benefit of our legislators, community partners, and allies who have joined us, could you share more about the unique benefits and advantages of early education in family childcare homes? And so I'll turn to Yesenia or Romery if you're able to answer that question. If not, love to hear from the audience on your thoughts on everything we've discussed tonight.
Alejandra, we had a comment on the chat. Could you repeat the 3 laws? Well, the 3 bills that were...
Yeah, absolutely. So the 3 we have, an act relative to large family childcare homes. And Kim, if you could actually throw them in the chat, that would be great. Which would increase the capacity from 10 to 12. An act to provide retirement security to care workers, which would create retirement plans for early educators. And an act promoting a foundation for universal childcare, which would change municipality rules at a state level. So those are the 3 509 specific. They are not associated with Common Start, but we believe that they can go together as we push a vision for childcare that focuses on making family childcare a sustainable field. Thank you, Santiago, for bringing that. In Romery, I don't know if you remember the question, but if you haven't, you can go.
I think if we be able to increase our capacity for 12 will be great, because sometimes I think just one assistant, it's not enough. With 12 kids, I'll be able to have 2 assistants to attend. My focus is on the kids with special needs, because sometimes I feel they being let out because it's too difficult to take care of them. And it's a lot of kids with special needs. And I think will be great, especially for me, if I have the chance to work with two assistants to serve more kids with special needs. That's my goal.
Thank you, Romeri. Give me 1 second. And so now I'm going to just turn it over to the audience for any thoughts, any questions that you might have, not just about our three bills, but as well as the Common Start vision. Are there any questions you might have on how Common Start would impact your work? Do you feel that these challenges that the panelists spoke about related to you? Have you experienced similar challenges with your own program?
Alejandra, flagging two questions, one from Wendy in the chat and another question from Rebecca in the chat.
All right, Wendy. All right. So Wendy's question was, the bill has the bill from 10 to 12, so our large family childcare bill. She's asking, can we be more specific about the ages in the bill? So currently, I don't think there's specific language about the ages for the children, but rather just increasing the capacity. That would largely need to be EEC determining the ages and the recommendations there. And then James, could you help me with the second question? Where was it? Is it Rebecca?
It's Rebecca's question about what are the next steps in supporting the passage of the Common Start vision and the other legislation that you mentioned. And I also want to flag that Maria also has her hand up.
All right, perfect. All right, so this is actually a perfect question, a great question. Thank you so much, Rebecca. So as we go into the legislative session, there will be hearings on Common Start, and you can reach out to James if you'd like to provide testimony, if you'd like to send letters to your legislator and speak about the importance of Common Start, as well as these other bills that we've mentioned. So that is one avenue that you can help, and that anyone here tonight can help in making sure that Common Start is passed, or Common Start vision is passed this session. So that is a great question. Thank you, Rebecca. And Maria, feel free to speak.
¿Puedo hablar?
Sí, María.
Ok. Yo me aumenté mi licencia, es de 6. Mi nombre es María Torre, en primer lugar. Buenas tardes. Soy proveedora de Cambridge y tengo 18 años trabajando con niños en Cambridge. Y aumenté mi licencia a 6+2. Y yo no he encontrado los 2 niños. Todos los niños que me llaman son pequeñitos y estoy llena y ya no lo puedo coger. Y no encuentro esos 2 niños que me hacen falta para las tardes.
Thank you for that, Maria. On the 509 side, I'd recommend that you reach out to either Santiago and William and see what we can do to try and assist you with that. But we also know that like Romeri mentioned, a lot of families struggle to afford childcare, and this has been a major issue. And that's why Common Start, the vision is so important, so that we can support families that haven't been able to get into care and to fill your slots. This is a major issue. It's always been a lifelong issue for educators, is sometimes we struggle to fill slots because there's not, we can't find families and do things like that. And so with the changes with the Common Start vision, we foresee and we hope that everyone will be full, that everyone will have the full capacity that they want. So thank you, Maria.
De nada.
¿Yo podría decir algo?
Sí, sigue. Yes. Jessica.
Bueno, creo que la idea que tienen de que suba de 10 niños a 12 es muy buena, magnífica. Yo ahorita mi licencia es de 6+, pero sí estoy pensando agrandarla. Y bueno, eso es muy bueno, y que en todos los estados pueda llegar a ser, pues, en general, ¿no? Tengo una prima que se fue a Miami y quisiera abrir un daycare, pero es muy diferente de aquí. Por eso no lo he abierto. Y que haya un retiro para nosotros, pues la verdad es que tengo muchos años yo haciendo daycare y pues sí, uno de los problemas, ¿no? De las preocupaciones, voy a decir, es que sí, que no hay un retiro que haya hecho yo. Sí, mi error, lo que sea, pero no, y siempre ando pensando en cómo hacerlo, quién nos puede dar información o yo empezar solo hasta tener un savings, ¿no? Pero creo que es algo pues que nos va a favorecer mucho. Y mi pregunta es, ¿todo esto se habla? Obviamente no, sé que no llega de un día para otro. ¿Lo están hablando? ¿Lo están poniendo en la mesa? ¿Están hablando con quién? ¿Con IEC? ¿Con el Estado? ¿O cómo es?
Thank you, Jessica. All right. So I see a few other questions in the chat that I just want to get to as well. So we do have a question just about Revere. So Revere is one of the places actually where we flagged, we flagged an organization out of Revere flagged that there are these municipality rules that are preventing childcare from thriving. And so Revere is one of the reasons why this bill, which is called an Act Promoting a Foundation for Universal Childcare, was started and began because we saw that Revere's limiting childcare and limiting family childcare in a way that, quite frankly, doesn't make sense and doesn't align with other places in the state rather. And so that's why that bill came about. So Revere is actually one of our focal points as to address this issue through this bill. So thank you for that question, Carolina.
Una pregunta.
Sigue.
¿Hay alguna manera de que ayuden a los proveedores cuando no son de casa porque no nos permiten tener family child care debido a las aseguranzas? Ok, es que yo he sido proveedora, mi nombre es Sandra, yo he sido proveedora por ya 5 años, pero tuve que mudarme de la ciudad de Boston porque no pude encontrar un sitio donde yo pudiera mantener mi daycare debido a la aseguranza. Pues no tengo casa propia. Y donde yo estaba, el dueño decidió que ya no quería más un family child care por la aseguranza.
Eso es cierto.
Mi pregunta es, ¿hay alguna manera en que nos puedan ayudar con eso o no hay manera?
Thank you for the question, Sandra. So there are a few different ways that we can address this, and I recommend you reach out to either William or Santiago to talk about it. But every city kind of has their own rules and regulations around how we can help family childcare thrive. And so for Boston, just as an example, the early education office will help with dealing with landlord issues. And so reach out to one of us and we can see, depending on your city, what we can do to try and help that issue when it comes to dealing with the landlord or things like insurance, because we know that this is an issue for a lot of family childcare educators that do rent their homes. Many of them face issues with landlords not wanting them to have family childcares within their apartments. And so this is an issue that we know exists, and thank you so much for bringing it up. And then I do see that there was a comment by Joana Alcantara, which I want to point out, about children with special needs needing more attention and having and how it can be difficult for family childcare educators to care for them. And this is why under the Common Start vision, it's so important that we provide this bedrock funding, the sustainability for our educators, so that you can have increased wages and be able to afford assistance and be able to afford the operating costs that come with dealing with children with special needs or dealing with children of different kind of capabilities. Having a steady bedrock funding is very important for us, as we've seen throughout the pandemic with the C3 grants, the sustainability grants. Having this funding, this source that stabilizes you and makes it so that you can provide quality care is very important. And so I'm going to offer the floor to see if there's anyone else that would like to ask a question. If not, I have a few more in the chat, but thank you so much for asking these questions. This has been a great discussion. If you have more questions just about Common Start and what it would be like for you as an educator in the impact, or any thoughts on Common Start, please feel free to share. This has been a great conversation tonight.
Hi, Sheila.
All right, so I don't know if I see any other comments or questions. If you would like, so Santiago and William will share their contact information for those that have questions and would like to reach out to us about any specific questions. Oh, and actually we do have a great question from Wendy that I'm going to pass on to Kim, which is, can you give an overview of the Common Start vision? What do the providers get out of it? Do we still get tax deductions, and et cetera? So I'm going to pass that on to Kim to answer.
Sure. So the bill focuses on two main pieces. The first piece is that bedrock funding piece, like Alejandra mentioned. So is transforming the stabilization grants that folks have access to right now to make sure that that there's a source of funding that doesn't need to be renewed every year, but that there's a source of permanent stable funding that folks can depend on to run their programs and educate their children and pay their staff and increase their own salaries and have access to benefits. That's one big piece of the bill, is that it establishes this permanent bedrock funding that the state will pay educators providing early education and childcare. The other piece of the bill is increased affordability and accessibility for families. So right now, a small percentage of low-income families or low-income families have to meet very specific parameters in order to be eligible for vouchers to access financial assistance for childcare. And the bill will expand the availability of financial assistance to a much broader range of families, and then over time, expand even further. And so those are the two pieces. Those are the two main pieces of the bill. I do not believe that the bill weighs in on tax deductions for homes, so that if whatever is happening, the policies in place now won't be affected by this bill. But I'll make sure that one of my colleagues can contradict me if I got that incorrect, if I was incorrect on that. So it won't, it won't.
Thank you, Kim. Are there any other questions or comments or just reactions from hearing about the Common Start vision, as well as the other three bills that we've talked about tonight? It's been great to hear from you all, but I'd love to see if you guys have other thoughts or questions or other issues that the audience has faced that we haven't talked about tonight.
I do have a concern, if it's okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, absolutely. Feel free, Wendy.
Okay. The reason I was asking about the timing of the bills for the 10 to 12 is because suddenly I have two moms who are expecting, and I'm already at my 10, and they're both expecting at the same time, and I need to kick one family out if this doesn't come in time. So, or at all. So that's why I was asking about the timing. Is there a time by when the voting is over, when the legislation stops, or can that go into October, November, December type thing?
Yeah, Kim, feel free to take that.
Yeah, so this session is an 18-month session. So it started in January and it ends at the end of July in 2024, before the current legislators have to run for re-election again in November. And so they have that entire, stretch of time to deal with the more than 5,000 bills that have been filed in this session. And on average, 5,000 bills get filed in a session, only about 300 of them pass. So there really is those are the timeline parameters that we have. We have opportunities to influence the bill. The hearing, which Alejandra and James mentioned for Common Start, will also have a hearing for the large family childcare homes bill. And so that will be an opportunity to bring urgency to the issue and talk to lawmakers about why, we need them to do this quickly and get it done now. But it's very difficult to predict.
So odds are pretty good. I'm going to have to kick out the second family that told me they were expecting. That breaks my heart. It really does. This family's been with me for almost 2 years and they're expecting their second child. And now I have to say, hey, go find childcare somewhere where it's not going to be possible to find it for one kid, never mind two. It's just heartbreaking. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the work you're doing.
Thanks. And Wendy, if you'd like to write that to your legislator, please feel free to. I think legislators truly need to hear on the impact as an educator, but as well as the families. So if your family would even like to write a testimony on this experience, they need to kind of hear how this is impacting us on a day-to-day. And when they learn that families have to get kicked out of programs because you just can't take them in because of a capacity issue that they can easily change. It's not a major change, it's just changing from 10 to 12. They need to hear that, and they need to hear these stories and experiences. And I did see that Kathy even left a comment similar to this. If anybody wants to write about their stories, their experiences, how the bill could help them, Common Start will gather them, as well as 509. We want these stories and we want to share them with legislators because it's so important for them to hear directly from you guys, the people doing the work every day, what it means to have these changes go through, what it means to have bedrock funding, what it means to change from 10 to 12. They need to hear that from you guys because you guys are both their constituents, but also the people doing childcare day to day. So
well, and the other thing is if I get my parents to write it, that's hearing from their point of view too. And it won't cost them a single red penny to say, yeah, you can go from 10 to 12. Let's do this. Even if they don't pass the other stuff right away and we have to wait for that, it's not as urgent as all these families needing childcare desperately. My wait list is over 30 kids. And they're mostly under 2. So it's heartbreaking.
Exactly, Wendy. I'm in full agreement. And I think that is the story that we want to share. This is why we have these discussions and why Common Start exists. It's to be able to talk about you guys' experiences, but also make waves in our legislator as to make changes that actually positively affect both our communities, but as well as our educators. So thank you for that.
Okay, I will write a letter again.
Thank you. And I did see a couple minutes ago, Joana Alcantara, if you'd like to go, I thought you were going to go speak. If not, it's okay. But I did see you prepare to go off mute. All right. Are there any other questions or comments that people would like to make? As we said before, Kathy, feel free.
I was just going to say, I don't know what town Wendy's in, but the lady that needs 2 children, if they're in the same town, Cambridge, she could send them over there. I mean.
I'm in Southborough.
Oh.
Which is right near Framingham. Yeah.
That won't work.
Well, there's only one other family childcare provider here in Southborough, and she's retiring next February. So that's going to make it even harder for these families.
And actually, that's another great point, is that we want to also promote and get more family childcare educators across the state. We know that there's a big gap and that there's a big need that is currently unmet because a lot of you are already full. And like Wendy said, she has a wait list of around 30 children. Those are 30 children that need to be placed with family childcare educators, with quality educators that can provide them with the foundation that they need as children. And so that's why it's very important that we promote things that make childcare a sustainable workforce for our educators. And I think I saw Yesenia's hand, so Yesenia, feel free to go.
Buenas, Maciel de este lado, Maciel Herrera. Buenas tardes. Yo lo que quiero agregar es que entramos tarde a la reunión y me están preguntando las personas que entraron tarde conmigo que más o menos de qué se trata porque nunca habían escuchado del tema. Si pueden hacer por lo menos un resumen de 1 minuto de lo que se está hablando para que ellas puedan entender. Yo sé de qué se está hablando, pero ella no. Pudimos entrar a última hora, pero era que el sistema no nos dejaba. Gracias.
Absolutely, and nice to hear from you, Maciel. So tonight we're talking about the Common Start Vision, which is a piece of legislation that we currently have out in the State House, hoping to pass it in the next year or sooner, hopefully sooner. And this piece of legislation would have several impacts on family childcare educators, as well as impacts on the early education just field as a whole. It would be changing the subsidy system to allow for families with higher incomes to access subsidies and be able to afford childcare. It would also increase wages for family childcare educators and provide opportunities to make improvements to the childcare system. So that's Common Start. And we were also just talking about 3 509 bills that currently exist that are separate from Common Start, which are to expand, to increase the cap, which is currently 10 kids to 12, create a retirement plan, and to prevent cities from having ordinances and zoning laws that prevent childcare from thriving. So that's a quick recap of what we've been talking about tonight. And now I'm going to go over to Yesenia, whose hand I see raised.
Buenas noches, Alejandra. Disculpa ahorita el ruido, ya que estaba en una transportación y no me podía comunicar perfectamente, pero también quería añadir que sería bien importante nosotros poder pedir que en vez de 5 días nos dieran 10 días o aún un poco más, porque nosotros estamos trabajando todo un año y mentalmente nosotros necesitamos tener ese tiempo. Nosotros nos pagan 5 días y durante el año, si nos enfermamos, un niño se enfermó, tomamos un día, ya entonces no tenemos 5 días ni para cogerlos de vacaciones. Y yo creo que nosotros nos merecemos esos 10 días, esos 12 días, que fueran más de lo que nosotros actualmente tenemos, porque verdaderamente nosotros lo necesitamos y nos los merecemos.
Thank you, Yesenia. Now I'm going to go to Joanna, and then we're going to start wrapping up. But I'd like to hear from Joanna and any last comments or last questions that people might have.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Joanny Alcántara, tengo familia de care aquí en Roundtable. Respecto a los niños con necesidades especiales, sí es bien difícil para nosotros, después que tenemos de 2 niños en adelante que necesitan cuidados especiales, es bien difícil aunque uno tenga asistente, porque necesitan más atenciones y tenemos aparte de esos niños de edad, por ejemplo, de 1 bebé o de 2 años. Entonces, me parece también que deberían de considerar lo que es la tarifa de los niños con necesidades especiales, considerar que sea un poco más elevada. Porque realmente así se opta por, ya después que uno tiene 2 o 3 niños con necesidades especiales, no aceptar otros que vengan. Por ejemplo, tuve un caso hoy de una mamá que vino a buscar el espacio, le interesaba, pero lamentablemente me dolió en el corazón, no, tengo como 3 niños ya con necesidades especiales, no podía citar otro más, porque es muy estresante, aparte trabajamos 10 horas al día, que es bastante, y el día entero tenemos que estar en constante actividad encima de los niños, ya sea de los que tienen necesidades especiales como para los demás niños, porque tenemos que cuidar tanto a uno como a nosotros, entonces demasiado trabajo y estresante. Terminamos el día muy desbaratado, realmente. Y con respecto a las vacaciones, deberían de considerar darnos 2 semanas, no los de enfermedad, los días de enfermedad que ya tenemos, sino 2 semanas de vacaciones pagadas, porque nosotras con lo que trabajamos muy duro día a día y no tenemos descanso. Cuando nos vamos de vacaciones 1 o 2 semanas, nos vamos sin paga. A veces tenemos asistentes que también necesitan ellos seguir cobrando porque tenemos deuda y bienes que pagar. Eso es todo y gracias.
Thank you so much to you both, Yesenia and Joanna. One thing I will point out as putting my 509 hat back on is that we're entering bargaining. And a lot of these issues we can also address at the bargaining table with EEC. So I've made note of a lot of these points already. You guys filled out the bargaining survey and you told us that special needs children rates as well as vacation time was very important. And so we saw that and it is in there. We're actually going to have our contract proposal session very soon, and we're going to send out an email and other information. But I just wanted to make the point that bargaining is coming up, and we do have avenues beyond the legislator. The legislator is one avenue where we can pursue things, but also at the table with EEC, we can do this as well. So I just wanted to bring that up. So now I'm going to go to Monica, Wendy, and then Maria.
Buenas noches. Mi nombre es Mónica Ochoa. Soy de la ciudad de Rivier. El motivo de mi pregunta es que la ciudad de Rivier nos pone muchas trabas para nosotros poder ejercer nuestra profesión. Yo vivo en la ciudad de Rivier más de 20 años, pero hoy en día hay mucha objeción. Me gustaría, sí, pertenezco a la Unión un buen tiempo ya, me gustaría que, como escuché, que se unificaran las normativas y las reglamentaciones de EEC con las ciudades. Me encantaría que Rivier es una de las ciudades que más problemas tiene. Quieren bajar de 6 a 4, porque eso está en los estatutos de la ciudad de Rivier. Y esa es la lucha de nosotros ahora para que nos den los permisos para poder ejercer Family Child Care aquí en Rivier. Gracias.
Not Gina, Kim, if you'd like to tackle that.
Sure. So Alejandra mentioned that one of the bills that we're focused on is a state law that would say that any community that has local policies that are out of sync with EEC policies has to stop enforcing those policies. But, you know, like we talked about with the large family childcare home bills, that bill is going to take a little while. The Revere Planning Board right now is considering an ordinance that would revise the existing policies to make it easier for providers in Revere to provide care. And they're holding a meeting on Tuesday, April 25th at 5:30 p.m. at Revere City Hall in the City Council chamber. So if Monica, if you're available that evening, or if your colleagues who are providers in Revere are available to go to that meeting and testify about the impact of these restrictions, that's a really powerful opportunity for the planning board to vote to make a change to the local ordinances. And then after the planning board considers the policy change, then the city, then the city council will consider it. There might be a step in between. And so advocating at that planning board meeting, getting in touch with your city councilors to make sure they know, not just the facts, but what you've shared, the stories, the impacts, the sort of the depth of how this affects people. That's how we, that's I think how we'll start to have an impact, or have an opportunity at least to have an impact.
And Monica, feel free to reach out to me or Santiago if you'd like any assistance preparing testimony, or if you'd like to attend. I'm going to be in attendance that day, so I'd love to meet you there.
Sí, yo sé que van a estar en el City Hall de Rivier, va a ser abril 24 a las 6 de la tarde, porque hay dos meetings, dos reuniones. Es abril 24 a las 6 de la tarde y abril 26 a las 5:30 de la tarde. Son dos reuniones que van a haber frente al City Hall. Sí, yo soy una de las personas que estoy activa en el WI, Ya mandé flyers a mis padres de familia, a otros padres de familia que pasaron por mi programa, a familiares, porque en realidad no somos babysitters ni proveedoras. Somos educadoras, personas preparadas, idas al college. No sacamos niños solamente criados, preparados con modales, listos para el kindergarten. Van con conocimiento de alfabetización, lectura, matemáticas. No son expertos, pero van con las bases firmes y bien seguras. Al menos hablo de mi programa, que es algo que yo me enfoco en sacar niños con buenos principios académicos. Gracias.
Thanks, Monica. And then I see Wendy has her hand up, so I'll go to you next, Wendy.
Okay, I was listening to my colleagues here, and along the same lines as the vacations, I would like to see the professional development days be able to align more with my program, because I have private pay families and voucher families. So what ends up happening is mid-year, I go January to December, and the voucher, of course, goes July to end of June. Mid-year, I'll get a schedule saying, well, September 13th, we have a professional development day. My families all have that schedule. I'd like to see those be able to float, so that if I have a day off for my families, a holiday, like Monday is Patriots Day, I could use that and get paid for that, instead of, making my private pays have another day off that they don't expect. So I think those really ought to be floating days.
Thanks for bringing that point up, Wendy. That's a great point. And we'll look into that on the contract negotiation side, how we can make professional development days be more flexible for our educators. I think that's a great point.
Thank you very much.
Maciel?
Sí, por aquí estoy. Con respecto a lo que estamos hablando de los días pagos de cierre, yo quería proponer, a ver, ¿qué ustedes opinan de cómo tenemos tantos días feriado pago, ¿verdad? Si por lo menos pueden darnos el Viernes Santo, porque considero que una fecha inclusive más importante que muchos días pagos que tiene IEC. Entonces, eso es lo que yo pienso, a ver si pueden proponérselo a ellos. El Viernes Santo.
Thank you for that. So we're we'll have our contract proposal session. We're gonna send out the email pretty soon, and this is stuff that we can talk about to bargain with EEC. So hold that point, and we can actually make that a point of discussion. I also see Wendy's comment about making the Christmas to New Year's break that EEC has offered for the past couple of years a permanent fixture, and these are things that are perfect to talk about during our contract proposal session, where we're going to prepare what we will be talking about and what we will be proposing to EEC as our new contract and what we hope to win. So I love these comments, because this is exactly what we want to hear from our educators on what we need for our new contract. And so seeing it as it is 7:26 and we've almost reached our time, I'm going to just end our discussion and thank you all for joining us tonight and for sharing your thoughts and opinions on both Common Start, but also the bills that we've talked about and just issues that educators are facing day to day. A lot of this work cannot be done without you, without your voices, without the advocacy. And so it's so important that we hear from you both in these spaces, but also in the spaces with our legislators and sending emails, making calls, attending rallies, attending lobby days. We need your presence there so legislators know that educators are here and that we want change, that Common Start is a reality, and that we must present this vision to our legislators so that it can be passed and that Massachusetts and our education system can benefit. And so I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for supporting Common Start. And if you want to learn more, if you have further questions, feel free to reach out to any of the 509 staff. Feel free to reach out to James. Like I said, if you'd like to provide emails, send emails or anything like that, we have avenues to send out emails and we can help you find out who your legislators are if you're unaware. And so we have multiple steps for you to get engaged. If you don't know where to start, if you don't know how to get engaged, that's my job. That's William's job, Santiago. A bunch of us here, that's our jobs. Our jobs are to get you engaged. So one basic step that you can do, and Kim just put it in the chat, is composing an email to your state representative or your state senator. You can do it in English and Spanish. It's a click. It takes a few seconds to do, and you'll send a message to your legislator on the importance of Common Start. The other thing is you can attend the Common Start monthly meetings. So we have a specific family child care group that meets at the second Tuesday of every month. So the next one will be May 11th. We used this month for this roundtable. So May 11th at 6:30 will be the next Common Start family child care group date, where we'll talk about what's happening next with Common Start and how you can get more involved. It's a great place to find out more if you have other questions on Common Start and you don't necessarily want to ask them now. And then lastly, feel free to, sorry if you hear sirens, feel free to email James if you'd like to testify at the Common Start hearing or submit written testimony for Common Start specifically. We're always looking for more testimony and to hear from educators on how we can promote Common Start. So thank you everyone so much for tonight. Sandra just put in the Common Start ma.org website. Feel free to check it out. And thank you for joining us.